Story time. So I always tell my friends that if you're homeschooling, you should have the most time in the world and you should just be able to do whatever you want to do because literally you get to make your own time. But I was really thinking about it yesterday as I was thinking about all the different things that you could potentially do in a day and all the things that I thought that I wanted to do and not feel like I had enough time to fit it in. So today we're talking about harmonizing homeschool. And I actually don't like the word homeschooling because if you're homeschooling, that means you don't want to send your kids to school. So why are you bringing school to your home? But that's a different conversation for another day. But we're going to go with it because I love alliteration. So harmonizing homeschooling, that's what we're talking about. So I've spoken to so many people and they have different concerns. Some people are like, am I going to mess my kids up? Am I doing the right thing? But what I really want to talk about is the idea that outside of having a full-time job, a part-time job, multiple side jobs or side gigs, or you're being pulled in multiple different directions, if you're really focused on home-centered education as your core thing that you're doing, you should really be able to have harmony. And I'm a person who does not like to should on people. I don't tell people what they should do, but I'm intentionally using the word should today because I want you to realize that there's intentionality that creates this harmony. Like some people just happen to happenstance bump into it, and that's great, that's amazing. But when you're trying to create harmony, it's something you're created, and created takes intention. So I'm saying to you that you should have harmony in your homeschool. And the reason for that is it's our birthright. Like peace is our birthright. Abundance is our birthright. Like all these things that we're seeking for when we start to feel the overwhelm or we start to feel like there are too many different things that we're trying to fit in. The reason it doesn't feel like there's alignment is one, because there isn't. And two, because we're not doing what we need to do in terms of intentionally creating that harmony that we seek, that we desire, that we deserve. So think about it, like, why don't you have time to do the things you want to do? Whether it's your personal time or whether it's a side business or whether it's even the home-centered education. If that's what your focus is and that's what your goal is, why don't you have the time to do it? Now, granted, you may have other things going on, like, you're a domestic goddess, you keep the house clean, the dishes in the sink, you're cooking, and you're doing all those other things. I get that. However, if the bulk of your time should be spent on home-centered education, why is it that we're not fitting everything in? And that's what I want to talk about today. Not from a place of judgment, not a place from a place of scolding, but from a transparent place where I have been sitting here some days like, I'm a productivity coach. If I can't figure this out, how are other people doing it? Like, I work on time management. I tell people tips and tricks and solutions to make sure that they can manage their time well. So I need to make sure that I'm living this and that I'm really figuring it out for my own. But really, from the place of sometimes feeling overwhelmed, like, wow, there's so much to do, and how do you fit it all in? And even maybe the question is, do you need to fit it all in? So I want to share a quick story because I remember at one point I just had so much going on. I was living in New Jersey where I live now, and I was working in New York City. So my commute was anywhere from like an hour to an hour and a half, depending if I took the bus or several trains um, to get to work or home. And I was volunteering in my church. I was doing coaching. I had my two baby boys. This was before I had my third child. Um, I was working full time in human resources. And there were just so many different things. Like I had a social life, all these different things. And I was like, how do I get all these things on my to-do list off my to-do list? How do I actually accomplish them? How do I get them done? And I was like, I need to partner with my partner. Like I just had this big, light bulb of I just need to ask my husband to help me. And I wrote this entire list and I was like, babe, so I have to get all this done today. Can you write your name beside the ones that you can help me with? Because I'm like, okay, this is brilliant. I'm just gonna delegate. What he can't do, we'll outsource and da da da. And I'm like, okay, this is brilliant. It's just gonna work. And then I'll just make up a number. Let's say there were like 17 things on the list, right? It was a lot. He wrote his name beside like two. And I'm like, babe, there are like 17 things on the list and you put your name beside two. So, that's a lot for me to do. He's like, you said you have to get them done today, right? I was like, yeah. He said, I can't do those today. And I'm like, okay, fine. So what about tomorrow? He said, Ro, you wrote the list. And it dawned on me that this list was self-inflicted. I was the one who was saying, this must happen today. Now, granted, some of those things were probably on the list for like a week. So clearly it didn't have to get done that day. There's some things that are important. There's some things that are urgent. There's some things that are time sensitive. But in the grand scheme of things, we make up those time frames. And the reason I share that example is because it's pretty similar to what happens in our home. We're the ones making the schedule. We're the ones choosing the curriculum. We're the ones saying what has to happen today, what time we start, when we take a break, how long the break is. We have control over so many of these elements. So if we are not in alignment, if we're not experiencing harmony, guess what? We have to look in the mirror and figure out what's going on. And that's what I want to talk about today, because I truly believe that when you harmonize and when you're seeking harmony, you should have a flow. You should have a rhythm. Maybe you're not a routine person, but you should have structure. And again, I'm using the word should because I want you to experience this. We have to have structure. It may not be that every day you start at 8 a.m., but it may be these are my core things that I do every day. And once I get these done, then I feel at peace. It may be this is a priority for the week. And as long as I get this done, then, I'm feeling better about things. But the first thing I want to talk about in terms of why we're not experiencing harmony, it's probably mindset. It's probably something that's going on in our beautiful little minds that it's not realistic on the outside. It could be something that we need to unlearn, right? Maybe there's some societal pressures that we've accepted or internalized. Maybe there's some things that we need to unlearn about school or education or what it should look like, right? There's that should again. Maybe there's someone that we're trying to prove something to. Maybe someone said something to you like, how are you going to homeschool? You're not smart enough. Or, oh, you're going to homeschool your kids? Do you think you're going to mess them up? Maybe someone said something to you and you really cast that thought out. You never paid any attention to it, but that seed was planted in the back of your head. And subconsciously or unconsciously, you're trying to prove this person wrong. You're trying to dictate your entire life to make sure that that person is never right, or that you can say, see, I did it. Or that person's thoughts or comment is playing in your head and you're fighting against it. So the reason that you can't experience that peace that you so deserve is because you have all these thoughts in your head that you're processing, and there's this script and there's this narrative, and there are all these things that you're thinking about, and you're unable to truly experience the peace and the joy that should come with being with your little ones, with doing life with your kids. Because like sometimes my kids wake up and I'm like, all right, here are my students, but they're my sons, they're my children, they're my joy, right? That's what they should be. But sometimes we just see them as, all right, mind, come over here so I can educate you, so I can check that off the list. So maybe it's something like that. It could be a lack of clarity. Maybe you're like, you know what, I don't really know how to do this, or I don't know if I'm using the right thing, or if I'm doing the right thing. It could be something like that. It could be that you lack vision, or you don't have a mission, or you don't really know why you're doing this, right? So from a mindset standpoint, if it is one of those things that I mentioned or something else popped into your head, really spend some time to think through what that is and try to reconcile that. So mindset is potentially one reason why we're not harmonized in homeschooling. The second thing is we could probably be using the wrong curriculum. So for me, I love a classical education. I love that organic learning and really trying to facilitate the way kids organically learn. So I like the classical approach. That also means that I have to have my own math curriculum because I'm not sure that I have come upon like a classical math curriculum. And then I'm also doing like the core things like the reading and the writing and the arithmetic. So I have like all the electives in one curriculum, and then I have math separate. I have um, language arts separate, which language arts in itself is such a bundle because it's the grammar, the punctuation, the reading, the writing, the handwriting, the spelling, composition, all of that. So that in itself is a lot. So maybe you're using the wrong curriculum. Maybe you're in love with a curriculum and you know that it's not good for you. Like, for example, there are at least 2 or 3 curriculums that I can think of. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I love this. It has a checklist and it has all these amazing things and it'll keep me accountable. But it's going to drive everyone in the house crazy because we're going to be so stringent, rigid, trying to get something done versus having something for accountability, right? It could be that you're forcing yourself to use a curriculum because you spend so much money. And I understand that, right? It could be that you're forcing yourself to use this curriculum because you just want to get through the year, you want to get through the season. And I welcome pivots, right? There is there's a thought that you want to be consistent and you don't want to keep switching your kids from curriculum to curriculum. I completely get that. I also think that if there's a time when you realize this is just not working for you, not working for them, not working for anyone, maybe you count your losses ahead of time and then you make that pivot earlier. Even though you may be thinking, but what about the gaps? The scope and sequence is a little bit different. That's something to think about too. However, what's at stake? Your peace at stake, your relationship is at stake, there are different things at stake, right? So that's another thought that maybe the curriculum you're using just really doesn't serve you or your family. Maybe you're using a 5-day curriculum, but you really envisioned a 3-day or a 4-day homeschool curriculum. So then that in itself already shifted the alignment. In your head, you're like, we're taking Fridays off, we're taking Mondays off. Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe you want to do more days and this one only calls for 3 days or 4 days. It could just be that the curriculum is not working. And that's why you're not experiencing the harmony that, again, you deserve. I want to nail that in your head, that you deserve to live a life of peace, a life of joy, and a life of abundance. So it's this idea of, how do they say it? Trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, right? Like, our children deserve the individualized learning. So if there's something that really doesn't work for them because maybe they're a kinesthetic learner or they're auditory processor or, they're visual learner, those are things that we need to take into consideration. Or maybe we're like, well, I kept this book for my kids so that when the younger one comes up, they can use it next. And you're like, but it's just not working. They're a different learner. I had a conversation with someone who said with her oldest daughter, she used a reading curriculum. It was pretty straightforward, black and white. And for her second one, she just realized that it wasn't working and she didn't know what it was. She tried another one that had color and it's just like a light bulb went off. Something as simple as that. But I understand, in terms of resources and being resourceful, you want to make the best decisions financially for your family. Again, what's at stake? Can you do both? Can you go to a used sale curriculum? Can you borrow? Can you get it from the library? What's at stake? And then the other thing could be that your goals just don't align, right? Or maybe you don't have goals, maybe you don't have a vision. When you don't have a vision, when you don't have a mission, when you don't know why you're doing what you're doing, you don't remember why you started, you don't have an anchor. When you have that vision, you can say, okay, this is the goal. This is what I'm trying to achieve. Does this align with the goal that I'm trying to achieve? Yes, do it. It doesn't? Okay, no, let's put it to the side, right? So again, maybe for you, you're like, you know what? I'm going to do my core subjects every day. Every other day, I'll do a language. One day we'll do a sport or an instrument or something like that. But sometimes it's just that there's so much to do. And we're like, okay, so I want to do the reading, I want to do writing, I want to do arithmetic, I want to make sure that all the core subjects are covered. Then I want to raise a good human. I want to make sure that they understand how to do dishes, how to do chores, how to do laundry. I want to raise someone who is ethical and has spiritual values. And there's so many different things. And you're like, how do I fit it all in? And maybe the answer is that you don't. Maybe the answer is that you don't. You just don't fit it all in. You choose what's important, you prioritize, and you stretch it over a matter of time, right? You think about what's most important and not necessarily what's most important for today, but what's most important for this season. If your child is 4 and you're stressed out and you're not experiencing harmony because you didn't fit all the things in, I assure you that that 4-year-old has a couple more years to get things done. So give yourself a break and give your kid a break. If they're like 3 or 4 and there's like so much time, even if they're like 7 or 8, realize that a lot of things are cyclical and what they don't learn now, they will learn. So if something is sequential, obviously you do want to do it in that order. But if it's something where they can learn at a slower pace or they don't have to learn it right now today, maybe that's something that's taking away your peace or not giving you the harmony that you should have. So what will matter? Maybe the question is, what's the best use of my time now? What should I be doing right now? What should my child be doing right now? I used to hear people say that if you have older kids, you should spend the most time with them because they have the least time left. And I'm like, no, your older kids should be independent. They should be able to give you time to work with the middle kid and the last kid and the younger ones because they're the ones who are coming up, but I understand both perspectives. What works best for your family? I can't tell you what's best. There's no one size fits all. That's the beauty and the challenge. It's a paradox, right? Of home-centered education. That flexibility is a blessing and can sometimes be a challenge, but you just have to figure out what's the best use of your time right now, what's the best use of their time. So I want to give you just a few questions to think about to create harmony, right? As you start to anchor yourself and you look back at your philosophy or your approach or your mission or your vision, which you didn't write it, please write a 2 sentence or 3 bullet mission or vision, right? I really want you to think through some questions in terms of how can I harmonize my homeschooling? How can I get to a place where I'm enjoying my children? How can I get to a place where at 8 p.m. I don't want to plop face down on the bed because I'm worn out? How can I get to a place where everything is beautifully orchestrated like a symphony, right? There may be some cacophony, maybe sometimes the instruments aren't really working together because there's some warm up and there's some tuning up involved, but it's still a beautiful orchestra. It's still a beautiful symphony. So the first question I want you to think about is, am I living in alignment with my values and my goals and my beliefs, right? Ask yourself that question. When you say, I value peace, I value joy, I value relationship. When you look at your day, are those showing in your day? Are you making choices that align with the value that you give to relationships? Or are you blowing up and yelling at your kids because they're not doing what you want them to do in the amount of time? Or they're fooling around and they're goofing off, right? Think about what you value and make sure that there's alignment. Whenever you're misaligned, there's going to be some discontent and there's going to be a lack of peace and there's going to be no harmony. One of the things I failed to mention when I was talking about mindset or maybe the wrong curriculum or not having a blueprint for what you want your homeschool to be, maybe it's simply that you're just doing too much. And as a recovering do too much person, I know that there are times when my kids are in soccer, they're in swim, they're in guitar, they're in robotics, and then the library comes up with this other free class, and I'm like, okay, so we want to enroll in this too. And then I look at my schedule, I'm like, wait, Monday through Friday we have activities, and the weekends are no better. While we don't have any recreation, their play dates and their birthdays and their hangouts, and then there are all these things, right? And then there are other things that I'm teaching them, like laundry and chores and things of that nature. It could be that you're doing too much, and that's why there's no harmony. So that's a big one to think about. Are you doing too much? Are you team doing the most? If you are, scale back and figure out how to create harmony. So again, the first question I want you to think about is, am I living in alignment with my beliefs, my goals, my values? The second question I want you to think about, and this is pretty important, is, are there any negative thoughts or negative thought patterns or emotions that you need to address? I'm doing a devotional right now, and it's a fast, but it's not a physical food fast. It's a fast from wrong thinking. So it's a 40-day devotional, and each day there's a thought that you have to fast from. It could be a foundational truth about how much God loves you, and you have to fast from the thought that you think God doesn't love you, right? It could be maybe like a thought of, I have to work extra hard to be happy, or happiness is not at my reach. It could be, they're just different thoughts that we need to fast from. And as you think about your home-centered education, maybe there's some thoughts that are rooted into your decision making, and you need to uproot those, right? So the last question I would ask you to think about is, what aspects of your life can you simplify? What can you let go of to create more space for peace and tranquility? Is it that in the midst of all that you're doing, you need to say, all right, kids, 20 minutes quiet time. You can read a book, you can lay in the hammock, you can stand on your head, you can do whatever you want to do as long as you give me 20 minutes of downtime and you give the other person in the house 20 minutes of downtime. That way you don't end up playing around or making noise or creating chaos. right? Maybe it's something as simple as that, like, hey, everyone, 10 minutes, grab a book, sit on the couch, go to a separate room. It's quiet time. Maybe it's 5 minutes of, all right, everyone, we're going to close our eyes and we're going to breathe 3 times, breathe in, breathe out, inhale, exhale. That's what we're going to do for 5 minutes. Can something as simple as that create more harmony or create more space for peace? Can you simplify your meal plan? Are you the kind of person who likes variety? So you don't want to eat the same thing for lunch and dinner. You don't want to eat the same thing on Monday and Tuesday. That's me. I like variety. I want to eat a different breakfast at least 3 or 4 days per week. Ideally, every day I want to eat something different. I don't want to eat the same meal over and over because then it creates this aversion. I'm like, I don't want to see that again. All right. But that's okay if that's my preference. But what can I do to simplify it? Is it just a matter of spending an hour doing the meal prep so that when I do want those different things, everything is nicely seasoned? I just have to take it out and then I can make it. Is it that I'm making it in bigger batches, maybe freezing it? I don't like that. I really don't like that. I love when I say, hey boys, it's lunchtime, and I'm literally turning the stove off and they're having fresh food. That's what I like. That's one of my values. But if it's creating havoc and not allowing me to maintain my peace because I'm scattered, because I'm cooking and I'm this and I'm doing that, then maybe I need to simplify something, right? Maybe it's something where we need to simplify in terms of organization. If you're the person who can never find a pencil, even though you have 100 of them, if you're the person who can never find the books, even though you just used it 20 minutes ago or yesterday, maybe you need to simplify what organization looks like in your home. Whatever you need to do to create more place and space for peace and tranquility, that's what you need to do. So that's it, folks. Harmonizing homeschooling. I pray that this episode has challenged you, that you'll actually sit and do the work and say, how can I claim my day? How can I redeem my time? Everyone has 24 hours. I'm not concerned about what other people are doing with their 24 hours, but how can I make it where I'm operating from a place of joy and I'm not dreading the day and I'm waking up and I'm excited for a new day? Doesn't mean that I need to do more planning at night and less winging. Doesn't mean that I need to prep in the morning and say, you know what? We're not starting at 8. We're not starting at 9. I'm going to do all my important things personally or professionally from 7 to 9, and then we'll start at 10. Or maybe you're saying, you know what, guys, I really want to make you some hot eggs or some pancakes today, but guess what? Go have some cereal and I'll be with you in a minute. What are some things that you can do to simplify your life, to create harmony? This is my wish. This is my hope. This is my prayer for you, that you harmonize home-centered education and you really enjoy it and you don't look back and say, wow, I spent so much time fussing and doing the things that didn't matter. I fussed about the clean house. I fussed about the dishes. I fussed about not finding your pencil. I fussed about all these things when all I wanted was harmony and peace and joy, because those are my values. All right. So think about it, do the work, pray about it, and write me. Let me know. Add a comment, send me a note. Let me know, how are you harmonizing homeschooling? If you've been through this and you've figured out a routine or a structure that really works for you, share it. Would love to hear it.